A couple of years ago, a debut album captured the imagination and the ears of many listeners, myself included, that gave a chance to a band with a kind of a funny name, Astronoid. It's not quite an asteroid, it's not quite an android, it's an astronoid, whatever. But that album, which was entitled Air, was one that certainly seemed to have a lot of good things going for it. And as a result, the folks that listened to it were able to spread this album around so it got to more ears, to the point where now, here in 2019, with the release of their self-titled Sophomore album, it is a bit of an event. It's something that has been anticipated by a lot of different heavy metal fans. And meanwhile, those who are still in the dark, well, stick with me. We'll talk about this band, that way you can scope them out for yourselves. Astronoid is kind of a strange product in the fact that it definitely has that sort of post-metal or post-black metal or black gaze realm to it, but there's very much a positive tint to this. What you're going to hear within these releases is, you're still going to hear the standard very fast picking, you're going to hear the black metal riffing, but you're going to hear a lot more of sort of that positive glow that goes along with it. What happens is the difference between the major and the minor chord is astronomical whenever it comes to tone at times, and whenever you're able to put certain elements together within your composition, it creates a light as opposed to a dark. One thing that black metal is always able to really utilize, or wants to utilize, is that dark side, that more minor side, whereas with Astronoid, they seem pretty akin to just using those majors in order to really craft something that feels a little bit more sunny. This might seem like it is immediately not what some folks want, but listen to it and you'll understand that it's just as well tailored, and in fact, it's a pretty cool thing. Especially whenever you take a look and a listen to a New Color or I Dream in Lines. These feel like they're very dreamy and almost explorative in their overall timbre. But the one thing that you'll notice with these two tracks will stay with you before Lost and Fault and even somewhat into Breathe. There's sort of a paint-by-number that's happening with these opening couple of tracks where you can see where the composition is moving prior to it actually doing so. And that's one of the weaknesses that this album does possess, is that in its early going, it seems like they stayed within the same, overall place whenever it comes to how they were composing their tracks. Definitely a sign that the band is, while very, very good, still very, very young into their career, where they're still trying to figure out all the different undulations and explorative properties of their very sound. And this is something that opens up immediately into Breathe and Water. These are wonderful tracks that really showcase that the band has every capability imaginable in order to really explore and take that compositional idea that they were using for the first couple of tracks and kind of throw it out the window in lieu for a little bit more, expansion. And that expansion is what crafts these tracks into really sort of regaining your deep interest into this album. Not that you really lost it all that much before, considering it is such a very unique product. Not only is this sort of sunnier side of post-black metal or whatever something that is going to immediately strike you as a bit odd, the vocalization and the lyricism overall is going to feel like a bit of a either breath of fresh air or a what in the world is that type approach. There's a very high voice that's associated here. You don't hear any growls, you don't hear any sort of deep snarls. Instead, this is one that seems more on the opposition side, where it's aiming to stay a little bit high with its overall register and still try to provide a bit of a interesting overall appeal. It's almost as though a post-hardcore band or a group from the 2000s decided, instead of performing post-hardcore or performing what some of the kids called emo music, they instead decided to go a little bit deeper and maybe darker, but it's not darker because it's confusing. It's confusing. Instead of it being, the fast, hardcore, almost punk-like riffing, you instead have something a little bit more expansive, a little bit more geared toward, the black metal or the post-metal, and the overall result is just really pleasing on the ears. That's the thing about it, is that overall the pleasing of the ears of these riffs and these patterns and these compositions, I think this is why so many people, whenever Air came out, whenever so many fans and listeners were so utterly perplexed by this band but could not put it down, why they were instantly linked or glued. And if that's not reason enough, I wish I was there when the sun set, which is the 7th track on this album, certainly may be the reminder, the unexplainable reminder as to why that's true. This is a beautiful track that's 5.5 minutes long. It's able to balance, real mid-range riffing and tempo with just really soft and then also very addicting hooks. And as a result of putting all of those things together, you have a track that just feels absolutely beautiful. It's a nice blend of all of the different things that Astronoid is really able to bring to the table. But for whatever reason, this track just feels completely and totally new and feels very unique whenever it comes to this album. Certainly a highlight, certainly a track that I would pinpoint to you to scope out if you've never heard the band before. If you love this song, there's a good chance that you're going to fall in love with this band. Going to Beyond the Scope and Ideal World to finish this one off, you do have a near 6-minute track that's then offset by a near 5-minute track. Those 11 minutes certainly continue what the second half of this album has been able to accomplish, which is stripping away the idea that this is a paint-by-number real paint-by-number album, which was what you were sort of getting from the first 3 or 4 cuts off of this self-titled release. Again, as a sophomore release, you can still understand where songwriting is a bit young, where there's still a lot that can be learned from all of this, but overall, the second half of this album shows a real dynamisy, not to mention increases the number of dimensions to the sound that Astronoid was able to so expertly deliver to us with Air, which got us hooked in the first place. I feel like this is a disc that had a lot of real ups and downs whenever it first got started, but really smoothed out the waters and actually trended very much to the upper echelon and the higher side by the time this disc is over. The greatness of the second half of this disc is able to somehow excuse the first half of the disc, and that's mostly because the first half of the disc just really isn't all of that bad to begin with. It just felt a little formulaic. That's pretty much the lone complaint. The music itself was great, but you just saw a lot of it coming. So as a result, what do we have? Do we have a complicated disc, a tale sort of 2 sides, almost like a Jekyll and Hyde monster on our hands? Not really. The formulaic idea is just, as I've stated before, young songwriting. And as a result, you have still very solid cuts that are able to deliver, but it just feels very predictable. The second half takes care of that problem, and as a result, this album overall comes off as a 24 out of 30, one of the best of the young year here in 2019. As a result of that, this group also feels like they're not just a fluke. Instead, seems to be a signpost that they're going to be really along for the long haul, and a group that many of you should aim to get into, especially if you like the idea of post-black metal or post-metal. If these are adjectives that really appeal to you, Astronoid's a band that you should probably already know about, considering it's been a couple of years since Air's release. But I want to know what you guys think about the self-titled disc from Astronoid. Let me know in the comments below. You might notice the top part of this shirt. There's the hole of the shirt. Now you can't see my face. Well, you can, but not really. Buy the merch. I'm CoverKillerNation. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.